Welcome to Amorit Education Explainer. In this session, we are going to look at a very active HR compliance topic, new EEOC enforcement focused on DEI-related discrimination, often described in the workplace as reverse discrimination. Let me make the frame clear from the beginning. This is not a discussion about whether inclusion is good or bad. For HR, the real question is more practical. When can a DEI program create legal risk under Title VII, and what should HR do to prevent that risk? The current enforcement message is simple. DEI language does not protect an employment decision if race, sex, ethnicity, religion, or another protected trait is used as a factor in hiring, promotions, training access, mentoring, leadership programs, layoffs, compensation, or other workplace opportunities. So today, we will break this down in plain English. We will cover what changed, what reverse discrimination means, what real-world incidents have already happened, and how HR teams can keep inclusion work strong while removing exclusion, quotas, and risky decision pressure. This session is based on available federal sources and public enforcement updates. It is for education only and is not legal advice. Here is how we will move through the topic. First, we will look at what changed. This includes why EEOC attention has shifted toward DEI-related discrimination and why HR should not treat this as a distant legal debate. Second, we will define reverse discrimination in simple language. The important point for HR is that Title VII protects individuals. It does not protect only one group or only historically underrepresented groups. Third, we will walk through real-world incidents. These examples involve promotions, mentoring, training, affinity groups, and employer-sponsored networking opportunities. Some are lawsuits, which means they are allegations and not final findings. Some are settlements or agency findings. We will clearly separate those. Finally, we will move into the prevention plan. This is the most important part for HR. We will focus on what HR should review tomorrow: program access, selection criteria, manager language, documentation, and federal contractor obligations. The goal is not to scare HR away from inclusion work. The goal is to help HR make that work safer, fairer, and better documented. There are 3 reasons. First, in March 2025, the EEOC and the Department of Justice issued guidance warning that employment practices labeled as DEI can still violate Title VII. In simple terms, an employer cannot use a DEI label to justify a decision that treats someone differently because of race, sex, or another protected characteristic. Second, the Trump administration changed the federal contractor landscape. Executive Order 14,173 revoked Executive Order 11,246, which had been the long-standing framework for race and sex affirmative action obligations for federal contractors. That does not remove every equal employment obligation, but it does change the compliance direction for many contractors. Third, we are now seeing lawsuits, investigations, and settlements where DEI-related records are central to the issue. The records being reviewed may include promotion notes, diversity goals, training materials, employee group rules, mentoring access, internship criteria, and demographic tracking. For HR, the key takeaway is this: DEI is not automatically unlawful, but HR must make sure DEI programs do not give or deny employment opportunities based on protected traits. In everyday workplace language, reverse discrimination usually means this: a majority group employee or applicant says they were treated worse because of a protected trait. For example, a white employee says they were not promoted because of race. A male employee says he was excluded from a networking opportunity because of sex. Or an employee says a training program treated people differently based on religion, national origin, or another protected characteristic. But legally, the EEOC's framing is important. The EEOC does not treat reverse discrimination as a separate category. The question is simply, was this individual treated differently because of a protected characteristic? That distinction matters for HR. Title VII protects individuals. It does not say only some groups are protected. It prohibits discrimination because of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The Supreme Court's Ames decision also reinforces this. The court rejected the idea that majority group plaintiffs must satisfy a higher proof burden just because they are part of a majority group. So the HR translation is very direct. If race, sex, or another protected trait affects access to an employment opportunity, HR needs to treat that as a serious EEO risk. Before, many employers viewed DEI mainly as a culture and representation strategy. HR teams focused on expanding outreach, improving belonging, increasing diverse leadership representation, creating employee resource groups, and building mentoring opportunities. In many organizations, diversity goals, or diverse candidate slates, became part of the normal HR language. For federal contractors, Executive Order 11,246 also created affirmative action obligations connected to race and sex, along with other non-discrimination duties. Now, the enforcement lens has changed. The EEOC is asking whether protected traits are influencing employment decisions. That means HR cannot rely on good intention alone. If a manager says, "We need a woman for this role," or "We cannot select another white male," or "This leadership program is only for a specific racial group," that can become evidence in a discrimination claim. The new HR takeaway is not to end inclusion. It is to shift from identity-based access to neutral, job-related, open, and documented criteria. In other words, HR can still broaden outreach. HR can still build inclusive culture. But the actual employment decision must be based on skills, experience, performance, readiness, business need, and other job-related factors. In September 2020, during the first Trump administration, Executive Order 13,950 targeted certain race and sex stereotyping concepts in federal training. That order was later revoked in 2021, so it is mainly background context. The bigger current change begins in January 2025. On January 21, 2025, Executive Order 14,173 revoked Executive Order 11,246. For federal contractors, this was significant because EO 11,246 had been a major foundation for affirmative action obligations related to race and sex. Then, on March 19, 2025, the EEOC and DOJ issued technical assistance warning against unlawful DEI-related discrimination. This guidance made clear that Title VII still applies even when a program is described as DEI. Then, on March 26, 2026, another contractor-focused order addressed racially discriminatory DEI activities in federal contracting. That added a contract compliance layer for federal contractors and subcontractors. For this webinar, we should keep the tone neutral. The point is not political debate. The point is HR impact. What changed? What records may be reviewed? What programs should HR audit? And how can employers reduce risk while continuing equal opportunity work? DEI-related risk can show up in several places. In hiring and interviews, risk appears if race, sex, ethnicity, or another protected trait affects who is moved forward, who gets interviewed, or who receives extra consideration. In promotions and leadership programs, risk appears when managers feel pressure to hit representation numbers instead of applying job-related criteria consistently. In training, mentoring, internships, or educational opportunities, risk appears when eligibility is limited by protected traits. For ERGs and affinity groups, the risk is not the group itself. The risk is when access, attendance, employer sponsorship, or career-building benefits are restricted in a way that excludes others because of race, sex, or another protected trait. In pay, bonuses, and layoffs, the risk becomes even more serious if demographic metrics influence employment outcomes. A simple HR test is this: would the employee have the same chance if their race, sex, ethnicity, religion, or other protected trait were different? If the answer is no, HR should pause and review the practice before it creates a complaint, investigation, or lawsuit. In May 2026, the EEOC sued the New York Times. The allegation is that a white male editor was denied a promotion because of race and/or sex. The company denies wrongdoing, so HR should treat this as an allegation, not a final finding. But even as an allegation, the case is useful for HR training because it shows where promotion risk can come from. Promotion decisions often involve manager comments, interview notes, candidate slates, leadership goals, and emails. If those records suggest the final decision was influenced by race or sex, the employer may face serious Title VII risk. So what should HR do? First, use job-related promotion criteria. Second, keep scorecards and interview notes. Third, train managers to avoid risky language such as, "We need a woman," "We need more diverse leadership," or "not another white male," when discussing individual selection. Fourth, document the business reason for the final choice. The prevention message is simple. Diversity goals should not replace promotion criteria. HR should be able to show why the selected person was chosen based on the role requirements. Now, let's look at 3 more examples: access, training, and networking. First, IBM. The DOJ announced a settlement resolving allegations that IBM used demographic targets and limited certain training, mentoring, leadership development, or educational opportunities based on race or sex. The important wording is allegations. The resolution did not include a liability finding. Still, for HR, this example shows the risk of limiting career-building opportunities by protected trait. The prevention step is to keep eligibility open. If the organization wants to support underrepresented employees, HR can use broad outreach, but the application and selection criteria should be neutral and documented. Second, Planned Parenthood of Illinois. The EEOC announced a resolution after finding reasonable cause involving race-segregated mandatory affinity caucuses and other race-related concerns. This example shows that training and affinity programs can become risky if employees are separated by race, required to attend race-specific sessions, or exposed to language that may be viewed as harassment. The prevention step is to review training content, facilitator scripts, and attendance rules. ERGs and affinity groups should generally be open to allies and should not control access to employment benefits based on protected traits. Third, Coca-Cola Beverages, Northeast. The EEOC alleges that male employees were excluded from an employer-sponsored networking trip based on sex. This is still an allegation, but it is a strong HR example because networking events can lead to relationships, visibility, leadership access, and career opportunities. The prevention step is clear. If the employer sponsors a career-related event, access should not be restricted by sex or another protected trait. Use job level, department, role relevance, performance readiness, or business need as eligibility criteria instead. HR should expect more employee complaints. Workers may challenge promotion decisions, leadership programs, trainings, ERGs, job assignments, mentoring access, or networking events if they believe protected traits influenced access or outcomes. HR should also expect more document requests. In a charge or investigation, the EEOC may ask for DEI goals, demographic data use, training content, selection records, program eligibility rules, and manager communications. Federal contractors should expect extra scrutiny because the contractor environment now includes executive order and contract compliance considerations, not only general Title VII risk. The Ames decision may also increase litigation activity because majority group plaintiffs cannot be required to meet a higher proof standard simply because they are part of a majority group. But we need to be careful not to overstate this. It is not confirmed that every DEI program will be challenged, and it is not true that every challenge will succeed. The outcome depends on the facts, documents, witnesses, program design, and whether protected traits actually affected employment opportunities. For HR, the practical step is to audit now, before a complaint turns program documents into evidence. For HR leadership, the responsibility is to set guardrails. Leaders should approve DEI program design, define what is allowed, and make sure inclusion efforts align with equal opportunity rules. For HR BPs and employee relations, the key job is manager coaching. HR BPs should listen for risky language, correct it early, and treat DEI-related complaints as EEO concerns rather than casual disagreement. For recruiting and talent acquisition, broad outreach is still useful, but selection standards must be neutral. Recruiters should not move candidates forward because of race, sex, ethnicity, or another protected trait. For L&D and DEI teams, the focus is training content and program access. Review slides, examples, group exercises, eligibility rules, and facilitator notes. For payroll and compensation, watch bonus structures. If manager incentives are tied to demographic outcomes in a way that pressures employment decisions, that can become risky. For compliance and legal, the work is records, approvals, investigations, and federal contractor clauses. The practical goal is not to weaken equal opportunity. The goal is to keep equal opportunity strong while removing exclusion, quotas, and decision pressure tied to protected traits. The first rule is open access. Mentoring, leadership development, networking, internships, training, and career-building programs should be open to all eligible employees. HR can still encourage participation from underrepresented groups, but the program should not exclude others because of a protected trait. The second rule is neutral criteria. Use skills, experience, performance, business need, job level, readiness, and role relevance. The more specific the criteria, the easier it is for HR to defend the program. The third rule is careful wording. Emails, slides, manager notes, and goals should not say or imply that the organization is selecting people because of race or sex. Words like must select, only, reserved for, or not eligible because can create risk. The fourth rule is strong records. Keep scorecards, selection reasons, complaint logs, approvals, and program guidelines. Documentation is what helps HR show that the decision was job-related and fair. This is the balanced message. Keep inclusion, remove preference, and document the business reason for workplace decisions. Start with DEI policy language. Does the policy support equal opportunity, or does it suggest preferences based on protected traits? Next, review hiring scripts and scorecards. Make sure candidate movement is based on job-related criteria. Review promotion criteria and leadership program eligibility. Ask whether every eligible employee has the same opportunity to apply. Review mentoring, internships, and educational programs. If any program is limited by race, sex, ethnicity, or another protected trait, HR should review it with counsel. Review ERG and affinity group rules. Groups can support belonging, but access to employer-sponsored benefits should not be restricted unlawfully. Review mandatory training content, manager email templates, compensation goals, bonus metrics, and any federal contractor clauses. Use one audit question across every program. Does this program give or deny an employment opportunity because of race, sex, ethnicity, religion, national origin, or another protected trait? If the answer is yes, unclear, or hard to document, that program should be reviewed before it becomes a complaint issue. The compliance risk is not inclusion itself. The risk is using protected traits as a shortcut for employment decisions. HR can support inclusion safely when programs are open, criteria are neutral, and decisions are documented. Open programs mean employees are not excluded from mentoring, training, leadership development, networking, or career opportunities because of race, sex, or another protected trait. Documented decisions mean HR can explain why a person was hired, promoted, selected, trained, or included based on job-related factors. Manager training is also critical. A well-meaning manager can create risk with one sentence in an email or meeting note. HR should train managers to discuss skills, performance, readiness, and business needs instead of demographic goals when making employment decisions. A good closing line for this webinar is, when HR uses open access, neutral criteria, and clear documentation, inclusion work becomes stronger and safer.